It was 11:47 on a Thursday night. I remember the exact time because I was staring at the microwave clock when I heard the front door slam. I'd been working on something, a prototype, a little interactive world I'd been building on my laptop for 6 months, hidden inside a folder labeled Tax Documents 2019 because I knew if anyone in my family found it, it would be over. My mother found it. She was standing in the kitchen doorway, my laptop open in her hands, the screen glowing against her face. She looked like she'd caught me with drugs. Her eyes were wide, not with curiosity, with disgust. "What is this?" She turned the screen toward me. My world, my beautiful, intricate, hand-coded world forests that swayed with procedurally generated wind, characters that blinked and breathed, a sky that shifted through 47 different shades of twilight. 6 months of my soul, glowing on a 13-inch screen. "It's mine," I said. "It's a video game." She said the words like they were a diagnosis, like she'd found a tumor. "You are in your 2nd year of law school at Columbia, and you are making video games. Have you ever had someone look at the thing you love most and treat it like it's something shameful? Like your passion is a disease they need to cure? Tell me your story in the comments." I read every single one. My name is Jenna Whitfield. And the Whitfields don't make video games. The Whitfields make law. They make precedent. They make partner. My mother, Judge Diana Whitfield, sat on the appellate bench in the Southern District of New York. My father, Richard Whitfield, had been a managing partner at Whitfield, Crane and Associates, one of the most respected litigation firms on the East Coast until his retirement 2 years earlier, forced by a series of failed investments and a malpractice settlement that quietly drained most of their savings. Nobody outside the family knew that. The Whitfield name still gleamed. The money behind it had gone dark. And then there was my older sister, Victoria, the firstborn, the prodigy. She'd made partner at a white shoe firm by 31, the youngest in the firm's history. She was my mother's mirror, sharp jaw, sharper tongue, the kind of woman who could cross-examine you over Thanksgiving turkey and make you confess to crimes you didn't commit. I was the other one, the quiet one, the one who, at 12 years old, had stayed up until 3 a.m., teaching herself to code from YouTube tutorials on a hand-me-down laptop. I'd built a tiny pixelated world, a castle with a moat and a dragon that you could feed by clicking on it. I'd shown it to my father at breakfast, buzzing with pride. He glanced at it for maybe 2 seconds. "That's cute, Jenna. Now finish your cereal. Your SAT tutor is coming at 9. I closed the laptop and didn't show anyone anything for 6 years. Growing up in the Whitfield house was like living inside a courtroom. Every dinner was a cross-examination. My mother would sit at the head of the table, always the head, never the side, and run through our weeks like a judge reviewing case files. "Victoria, how's the Henderson brief?" Victoria would launch into a precise, confident summary. My mother would nod, occasionally interject with a sharp correction, and Victoria would absorb it like sunlight. Then the eyes would turn to me. "Jenna, your property law grade, B+. The silence that followed a B+ in the Whitfield house was louder than any scream. My mother would set down her fork. My father would study his wine glass. Victoria would look at me with something between pity and irritation, like I was a stock that kept underperforming. "A, B+, my mother would say, is what students get when they're not serious. Whitfields are serious." That was her word, serious. It meant everything in our house. Serious meant worthy. Serious meant loved. And video games, art, creativity, imagination, those were not serious. Those were distractions, weaknesses, the kind of thing other people's children did, not Whitfield's. The night my mother found my prototype, she didn't yell. She set my laptop on the kitchen counter. She folded her arms. "You will delete that, tonight, and you will refocus. I didn't pull strings to get you into Columbia so you could waste your potential on toys. It's not a toy, Mom. It's a distraction. And I'm not going to watch you throw away everything this family has built because you want to play around with cartoons. It's not cartoons. It's interactive design. It's a real career. People make excuses, Jenna. That's what people do. Whitfields don't." I felt something crack inside me. Not break, crack. Like a fault line that had been building pressure for 25 years, I looked at her. At this woman who had never once asked me what I wanted, who had mapped out my entire life like a litigation strategy, high school, pre-law, Columbia, clerkship, partnership, judgeship, a perfect, airtight case, and I was just the exhibit. "No," I said. She blinked. In 25 years, I don't think she'd ever heard that word from me. Excuse me? I'm not deleting it. And I'm not going back to Colombia. The next 4 minutes were the longest of my life. She didn't scream. She went cold, colder than I'd ever seen her. Her voice dropped to that low, precise register she used when delivering a sentence. If you walk away from law school, you walk away from this family, from this house, from everything. Do you understand me? I will not fund a fantasy. I will not watch my daughter become a joke. Then don't watch, I said. I walked to my room. I packed one suitcase. I took my laptop, 2 changes of clothes, my charger, and $6,200 in savings from my part-time research assistant job. I walked out of the Whitfield townhouse on the Upper East Side at 12:30 a.m., and I didn't look back. I didn't have a plan. I had a Metro card in a suitcase with a wobbly wheel. I crashed on my college friend Priya's couch in Bushwick for 2 weeks, then found a room in a shared apartment in Ridgewood, Queens. $500 a month, a mattress on the floor, and a radiator that sounded like a dying animal. I got a job at a coffee shop in Williamsburg. $11 an hour plus tips. The irony was unbearable. Columbia law dropout. Steaming oat milk for tech bros who were probably making 6 figures building the exact kind of thing my mother had called a toy. But the nights were mine. From 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. Every single night, I built. I didn't just work on the prototype. I rebuilt it from scratch. Better code, better art, better everything. I poured every ounce of rage and grief and humiliation into that world. Every dismissive glance my mother had ever given me. Every silence after a B+. Every time my father had looked through me like I was furniture. It all went into the code. I created a game about a girl trapped in a glass tower. She could see the whole world outside but couldn't touch it. The only way out was to build, literally build, brick by brick, a staircase out of her own memories. Good memories became strong bricks. Bad memories crumbled but could be reshaped, repaired, made into something new. The higher she climbed, the more the tower tried to stop her. But the ending was what made it different. She doesn't escape the tower. She transforms it. She turns the prison into a garden. I called it Glass Houses. I posted a demo on an indie game forum at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, expecting nothing. I went to sleep. When I woke up, I had 1,400 notifications. The demo had gone viral overnight. Not massive, mainstream viral, but indie game community viral, which in some ways is more powerful because those people talk, they write, they share, they care. One of those people was Marco Reyes. He was a 30-year-old game designer from Austin, Texas. He'd built and sold 2 indie studios, had a reputation for spotting talent before anyone else, and he'd played my demo 6 times in a row. His message was simple. This isn't a game. This is a mirror. Call me. I called him. We talked for 4 hours, then 4 hours the next day, and the next. He wasn't just a designer. He was a builder. He understood the code, the art, the story, and more importantly, he understood what I was trying to say with it. Within 2 weeks, he'd flown to New York. We sat in my tiny Ridgewood room, surrounded by takeout containers and empty coffee cups, and mapped out a plan. Marco had connections. He introduced me to a small but fierce venture capital firm in San Francisco that specialized in creative tech, not the usual Silicon Valley grind, but companies that sat at the intersection of art and technology. They watched my demo. They played it. The lead partner, a woman named Claire Oduya, called me personally. I've funded 47 companies, she said. This is the first time a pitch made me cry. They offered $2.8 million in seed funding. I almost dropped the phone. We built the studio in Austin. Marco and I hired a team of 9. We worked 18-hour days for 11 months. I didn't take a salary for the first 6 months. I lived on ramen and adrenaline and the absolute bone-deep certainty that this thing we were building mattered. Glass Houses launched on a Wednesday in March. By Friday, it had 600,000 downloads. By the following Monday, it had crossed 2 million. The reviews were extraordinary. Not just fun game reviews, deep, emotional, personal reviews. People were writing essays about how the game had helped them process their own trauma, their own family wounds, their own glass towers. A major gaming publication called it the most emotionally intelligent game of the decade. The downloads kept climbing. 3 million, 5 million, 8 million. And then the offer came. Nexus Interactive, One of the three biggest gaming companies in the world, wanted to acquire our studio, the game, the IP, the technology, and the team. The negotiations lasted 4 months. Marco and I sat across the table from their legal team, 12 lawyers, in a glass conference room, and I thought about my mother. I wondered if she'd appreciate the irony. The final number, $38 million. My share, after Marco's cut, investor returns, and team equity, $19. $4 million. After taxes, and yes, I paid taxes. A lot of them I netted $11.6 million. I didn't buy champagne. I didn't throw a party. I sat on the floor of my Austin apartment and stared at the ceiling and felt absolutely nothing for about 3 hours. Then I opened my laptop and started designing something new. But first, I needed to breathe. I'd visited Savannah, Georgia once during college, for a long weekend. I'd fallen in love with it. The old oaks dripping with Spanish moss, the cobblestone streets, the art schools and galleries tucked into historic buildings. It was warm and slow and alive in a way that New York had never been for me. So when I started looking for a place to live, a real place, not a borrowed room, I looked south. I found it online. A restored antebellum estate on the outskirts of Savannah, sitting on 12 acres of live oaks and gardens. It had been built in 1847, abandoned in the 1970s, and painstakingly restored by an architect who'd turned the old carriage house into a massive, modern studio with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Savannah River. It was history and future in the same breath. I paid $4.2 million for it. Cash. That left me with over $7 million in investments and savings. More than enough to build the life I wanted without ever worrying about money again. The first night in that house, I walked through every room. The wide plank heart pine floors creaked under my bare feet. The ceilings were 14 feet high. The windows were original, wavy glass that bent the moonlight. I stood in my studio, and looked out at the river, silver under the stars, and I felt a thing I hadn't expected. Terror. Not excitement, not joy. Terror. Because a voice in my head, my mother's voice, whispered, "You don't deserve this. You make toys." Victoria argues cases in front of federal judges. Your mother shapes the law. And you make little people walk around on screens. Who do you think you are? That's the thing nobody tells you about success. The money arrives, the house is beautiful, and you're standing in the middle of it, and you feel like a fraud. Like someone's gonna knock on the door and tell you there's been a mistake, that this was meant for a serious person, not for you. The imposter feeling didn't go away on its own. It was Marco who helped. He'd moved to Savannah too. He was renting a cottage on the property, running our new independent studio from the carriage house. One night, he found me sitting on the porch, staring at nothing. "You're doing the thing again," he said. "What thing?" "The thing where you forget that you built something 8 million people love, and instead you hear your mom's voice telling you it's not real work." I didn't answer. He sat down next to me. "Jenna, the game made a grown woman, a venture capitalist, cry. You created something that makes people feel less alone. That's not a toy. That's a gift. And no courtroom in the world can do what your game does." I let that sink in. Slowly, over weeks and months, I started to believe it. We settled into a rhythm. Marco and I built our new studio. We hired local artists, developers, a composer from the Savannah College of Art and Design. The carriage house buzzed with creativity. I was working on a new project, bigger, more ambitious, something that would push the boundaries of interactive storytelling even further. And then, 7 months after I'd moved to Savannah, my phone rang. Unknown number, New York area code. I almost let it go to voicemail. Something made me answer. "Jenna? It's me, Victoria." I hadn't heard her voice in almost 2 years. It was different than I remembered. Softer, careful, like she was reading from a script she'd rehearsed. "Hey, Vic." So, I saw the Wired article and the Forbes piece. Wow, that house is gorgeous. There it was. 3 weeks earlier, Wired had done a feature on me, the law school dropout who built gaming's most emotional masterpiece. It included photos of the Savannah estate, the studio, the gardens, the river view. Forbes had followed up with a profile in their 30 Under 30 issue. Both articles mentioned the $38 million acquisition. "Thanks," I said, neutral, waiting. "So, listen." Victoria's voice shifted. The rehearsed casualness cracked slightly. "Mom and Dad and I were talking. It's been way too long. We all feel terrible about how things ended. We were thinking, what if we came down to visit? This weekend? Just to reconnect. See the house. See you." Reconnect. The word hit me like ice water, not because it hurt, because it was so perfectly, transparently hollow. They hadn't reconnected when I was sleeping on Priya's couch. They hadn't reconnected when I was making $11 an hour. They hadn't reconnected when I was living on ramen in a room with a broken radiator. But now that Forbes had put a number next to my name, suddenly they missed me. Sure, I said. My voice was flat, measured. This weekend works. I hung up. I sat there for a long time. Then I called Marco. They're coming, I said. The Whitfields? All three. He was quiet for a moment. You okay? I think so. For the first time, I think I actually am. They arrived on Saturday morning in a black town car. Watching them step out onto the gravel drive was surreal. My mother in a cream blazer and heels, on a gravel driveway in Savannah in August. My father in a pressed button-down, looking thinner than I remembered, older. And Victoria in a tailored navy dress, her jaw set, her eyes scanning the property like she was appraising it for a client. They looked like Manhattan, stiff and gray and polished, standing in the middle of all that green and gold and warmth. My mother tried to hug me at the door. It was awkward. Her arms went too high. Mine stayed too low. We collided somewhere around the shoulders and separated quickly. Jenna, this is she, looked past me into the great hall. The soaring ceilings, the restored chandelier, the wide windows flooding everything with light. This is something. It's home, I said. I gave them the tour. I was polite, distant. I showed them the gardens, the library I'd filled with art books and graphic novels, the kitchen with its original brick hearth. I watched them process it. My father touched the heart pine wainscoting like he was checking if it was real. Victoria lingered in the hallway, staring at a framed print of concept art from glass houses, the girl building her staircase out of broken memories. You drew this? She asked. I designed it. My lead artist rendered it. She moved on. The studio was last. I opened the double doors and watched their faces. The carriage house had been transformed. 20-foot ceilings, exposed brick, a wall of windows overlooking the river. Banks of monitors displayed work-in-progress designs. In the center of the room, a massive screen showed a playable slice of our new project, a luminous, breathing digital world. My father walked to the center of the room. He looked at the screens, at the art on the walls, at the team photos pinned above the workstations. He wasn't seeing any of it. He was calculating. I could see him adding up the square footage, the equipment, the staff. Impressive setup, he said. The word setup doing a lot of heavy lifting. We had lunch on the back terrace. A local caterer had prepared a beautiful spread shrimp and grits, fried green tomatoes, peach cobbler. The Spanish moss swayed in the breeze. The river glittered below us. It should have been lovely. Instead, the tension was so thick it felt like humidity. My mother made small talk. This cobbler is divine, Jenna. Is this your recipe? It's catered, Mom. Oh, of course. Of course. Victoria ate precisely, cutting her food into small, methodical pieces. My father drank sweet tea and stared at the river. I waited. I knew it was coming. I could feel it building like pressure before a storm. After the plates were cleared, my mother set down her napkin. She looked at my father. He looked at Victoria. Victoria looked at her hands. The choreography of cowardice. Finally, my mother spoke. She used her formal voice, her bench voice. Jenna, we didn't just come here to see the house. I know, I said. She blinked, momentarily thrown off. She recovered. Your father's retirement hasn't been well. The investments didn't perform as expected. And the settlement. She glanced at him. He looked away. The financial situation is tight. My father finally spoke, his voice rough. The firm is struggling. Crane left. Took half the clients. I've been consulting. But he stopped. I saw something I'd never seen on his face before. Shame. Victoria jumped in, her voice brisk and professional, like she was presenting to a client. What they're trying to say is that the family's financial position has deteriorated significantly. Dad's pension was tied up in investments that went south. Mom's judicial salary covers the basics, but the townhouse has a second mortgage. And she paused. For the first time, a crack in the armor. My firm dissolved 6 months ago. Partnership dispute. I'm in the middle of a job search, and the market for lateral partners is, she didn't finish. The golden child, the youngest partner in the firm's history, unemployed. My mother leaned forward. We're not asking for charity, Jenna. We're asking for an investment, a bridge loan, to stabilize things until your father's consulting picks up and Victoria lands somewhere. We're talking about maybe $2 million. She said it casually. 2 million. Like she was asking me to pick up the check at dinner. I looked at each of them. My mother, Judge Diana Whitfield, sitting ramrod straight, her cream blazer slightly wrinkled from the humidity, her fingers tapping the table in a rhythm I recognized from childhood, the rhythm of impatience, of someone used to giving orders and having them followed. My father, Richard Whitfield, a man who had once been the most commanding presence in any room, now shrunken, avoiding my eyes, ashamed not of how he'd treated me, but of the fact that he needed something from me. And Victoria, my sister, the prodigy, the mirror, sitting there with her jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles working, furious at the universe for putting her in a position where she had to ask her dropout little sister for help. None of them had apologized. Not one word. Not we were wrong. Not we're sorry. Not we should have supported you. They'd skipped straight past the human part and gone directly to the transaction, because that's all we'd ever been, a transaction. I let the silence stretch. 5 seconds, 10, 20. Long enough that my mother shifted in her chair, long enough that Victoria uncrossed and recrossed her legs, long enough that my father finally looked at me. No, I said. One word. Quiet. Not angry. Not vindictive. Just clear. My mother's face went rigid. Jenna? No, Mom. I'm not giving you $2 million. This is your family. Is it? I set down my glass. Because I don't remember getting a call from my family when I was sleeping on a friend's couch in Bushwick. I don't remember getting a check from my family when I was making $11 an hour. I don't remember a single text, a single email, a single voicemail in 2 years. Not one. Victoria, did you call me when your firm dissolved? When you actually knew what it felt like to lose something? Did you pick up the phone and say, "Hey, I get it now"? Victoria's face went white. She didn't answer. I turned to my father. Dad, you told me my whole life that I wasn't serious, that what I cared about was a waste of time. You looked at the thing I built when I was 12 years old, a little castle with a dragon, and you didn't even see it. You saw a distraction, something standing between me and the life you'd planned. He opened his mouth, closed it. And Mom, I looked at her. You told me that if I left law school, I was leaving the family. Those were your exact words. And you meant them. For 2 years, you meant them. Until Forbes put a number next to my name. And now suddenly, I'm family again? She reached for my hand across the table. I pulled back. You live what I'd call an extractive life, I said. Everything is a transaction. Love is conditional. Support comes with terms and conditions. You didn't raise daughters. You built a portfolio. Victoria was your blue chip stock, and I was the bad bet you cut loose. Victoria flinched. My mother's hand trembled on the table. But here's what you don't understand, I said. I'm not living that way. The thing I built, the game, the studio, this house, it wasn't built on extraction. It was built on creation, on giving people something that makes them feel less alone. 8 million people played glass houses. You know what they told me? They told me it helped them understand their own families, their own pain. It gave them a language for something they couldn't name. I stood up, walked to the edge of the terrace. The river moved below, slow and silver. I am making an investment. Actually, I finalized the paperwork last month. I'm funding a creative technology center here in Savannah. Free access for kids from low-income families. Coding, game design, digital art, music production, the whole thing. I'm calling it the Glass House Project. I turned back to them. I'm giving kids the thing I never had. A place where someone looks at what they've built and says, "This is incredible. Tell me more." Not, "That's cute. Now finish your cereal." My father looked like I'd struck him. The guest rooms are made up, I said. But I think it would be better if you drove back to your hotel tonight. My father stood. For 1 second, just one, I saw something flicker across his face. Not anger, not the old cold authority. Something softer, something that might have been regret, but he couldn't get to it. He didn't have the vocabulary for it. 25 years of treating emotion like weakness had locked that door, and he'd thrown away the key. He nodded once. Diana, Victoria, they left. The black town car crunched down the gravel drive, disappeared through the oaks, and was gone. I stood on the terrace for a long time after that. The cicadas were singing. The river was turning gold in the late afternoon light. Marco came out after a while, 2 glasses of sweet tea in his hands. He didn't say anything. He just stood next to me. "You okay?" he finally asked. "Yeah," I said, and I meant it. That was 5 months ago. The Glass House project opened last month. We converted an old warehouse downtown into a state-of-the-art creative lab. On opening day, 47 kids showed up. By the second week, we had a waiting list. Last Saturday, a 13-year-old girl named Amara showed me a tiny world she'd built, a garden floating in the clouds, with flowers that changed color when you touched them. She was shaking when she showed me, like she expected me to land. I knelt down next to her screen and said, "This is incredible. Tell me everything about it." She looked at me like no one had ever said that to her before. And I remembered being 12, sitting at the breakfast table, holding my laptop with my little castle and my little dragon, waiting for someone to see it. Marco runs the tech side of the studio from the carriage house. Priya, the friend whose couch I crashed on, moved down from Brooklyn last month. She's running the business operations for the Glass House project. On Friday nights, we cook dinner together badly, loudly, with too much garlic and not enough measuring, and sit on the terrace and watch the river go dark. My mother sent me an email last week. No subject line, just one sentence. "I watched a video of your studio opening. The children looked happy." I haven't responded yet. I don't know if I will. Not because I'm angry. I'm not, actually. Not anymore. But because I've learned something that took me 27 years and a lot of pain to understand. You don't owe your love to people just because they share your blood. Love isn't a debt. It's not a contract. It's not a ruling from the bench. Love is what you build, freely, with the people who see you, really see you, and choose to stay. My name is Jenna Whitfield. My family told me I wasn't serious. They told me my passion was a toy. They told me to get out. So I got out, and I built a glass house, and I filled it with light. Now I'm asking you, what are you building? What's the thing you've been hiding in a folder on your laptop, afraid to